welcome to the BoshNRoll channel. If you want to support my daily Eternal Magic offerings while getting amazing perks like the BoshNRoll Discord community, have me play your deck on the channel, or listen sideboard guides before tournaments, check out the Patreon or YouTube membership program. This channel is possible because of these amazing sponsors. Check them out, all their links are in the video description. As always, thanks for being here. Let's go play some Magic.
Welcome back to the BoshNRoll channel. Today I'm doing something a little different, and I am going to talk about the Commander ban update that happened earlier this week on Monday. I'm doing this for two reasons. One, because a bunch of people asked me to, and two, because I think there are a lot of things here worth talking about, even if you don't play Commander. My personal relationship to Commander, I was a judge. I was on the judge circuit, judging Grand Prix and Pro Tours in the late 2000s and early 2010s. I was introduced to EDH through judge circles, which is where Sheldon and the group pushed it out first before it took off and became the main format of Magic. So I was aware of EDH and building decks probably in 2008. In the last couple of years, I've gotten into competitive EDH. I've won a bunch of tournaments there in my intro that you probably saw if you're watching this video. But I really enjoy casual Commander and I enjoy competitive Commander. I do both of those things. I'm going to set some ground rules for this conversation. The first one is the world is crazy right now. There are wars, there are civil rights under threat, there are crimes against humanity being perpetrated daily, we got climate change, we've got the looming US presidential election. And with all of that in mind, I just want to keep in mind for all of us that we are talking about a card game. And when things get passionate with me or with you, in terms of the problems of the world, this is very low. Related to that, I've been posting silly little videos about the bans all week. Check out my YouTube shorts if you want to see those. And I've gotten some weird comments like, oh, news at 11, privileged white person complaining they can't play a Magic card anymore. Like, yes, I am privileged and I'm a white person. I am playing Magic for my job. That is obviously something of privilege. I'm aware of that. Selling all my Magic cards would not save Palestine, so I don't know what we're talking about. This is not the BBC World Service. This is a Magic the Gathering YouTube channel. So if you want that sort of thing, you're in the wrong place. And in case it was confusing, if you're in a position to care about what's banned in Commander, you are also coming from at least some place of privilege. Second ground rule, leave the Rules Committee and Commander Advisory Group alone. Don't be a freak. Don't threaten them. It's insane behavior. You should not be in their DMs. You should not be on their various YouTube channels or content platforms being unhinged. It is okay to be passionate about this game. I love this game very much. I am passionate about it too. That's why I'm making this video. But to personally threaten or attack people who are making decisions that are, in general, for the good of the game, you are a freak, and stop doing that. And speaking of freaks, if your reaction to a video like this is LOL cry more, or I love seeing tryhards cry, or whatever, maybe think about why you feel that way. Are you jealous that someone could afford a Mana Crypt? Are you mad about just one jerk at your local store who pub stomps every time and can't be talked out of doing that? Like, what is actually driving you to make a mean comment to a stranger on the internet who, by the way, is not offended? Cry more? Okay. I'm not crying. Whatever. If that is your reaction to this, maybe just don't post. And if you hear me say this and post anyway, you're doubling down on being a freak. Stop it. We are all Magic players. We're into the same stuff. There is no casual versus competitive. There is no try hard versus I'm just here for fun. There is no versus. We are all Magic players and we have something in common, and we are much closer than the average person you walk by on the street in terms of our interests and what we are into in life. So maybe don't just be a jerk to people in your own community. It is annoying that I have to say all that, but I did. And now that that's covered, if you're still with me, let's actually talk about some Magic bans. Some disclosures from my point of view. I've been collecting Magic since I was 9 years old. I love this game. I've built a career around this game. All of that remains true, no matter what I say in this video. I am not quitting Magic, and I'm still going to continue owning Magic cards. I like owning Magic cards. I like expressing myself through different treatments based on the different vibe of the deck, and owning cool foils, or specifically not foiling out a certain deck because just the vibe is better as a non-foil deck. I like that the game offers all those things. To the proxy everything crowd, the people who believe it is foolish to own even a single Magic card, because why would you do that if you just have a printer? Well, without someone buying Magic cards, you would not have Wizards of the Coast to make Magic for you to print cards of anymore. You also would not have local game stores to go to play your fake cards. So you are not supporting this community. I don't know what to tell you. I'm not anti-proxy. It's just not for me, and it cuts out a portion of what I like about the game. I do like owning things and collecting. That is an appeal to me about this game. It is a collectible card game. That said, I own 6 Mana Crypts and 5 Jeweled Lotuses. The retail value pre-ban of around $3,000. A couple of them were very nice, like the top end. I like the Masterpiece Mana Crypt. I have the textured foil Jeweled Lotus. That is a lot of money represented. But a couple things about that figure is, one, I wasn't going to sell them today, so they are worth $0 until you sell them. So they're still worth the same $0 they were to me before the ban. It's all kind of theoretical money that nobody took $3,000 out of my bank account. Second of all, like I said, I've been collecting since I was 9 years old. I play Legacy, I play Vintage. I won a Black Lotus earlier this year. So that's my second Black Lotus. That's the kind of collection we're talking about here. And that's not a brag. I'm just trying to make context for the fact that this is a financial hit, but it is not going to break me. In fact, I barely feel it at all in the terms of my overall collection. So when we're talking about the financial fallout of this later, I just want you all to know where my personal investment in all of this lies. The 6 Mana Crypts and 5 Jeweled Lotuses, and 2 Dockside Extortionists, by the way, that I owned were all in decks. I had 14 or 15 decks built, and I chose where to put those based on the intended power level of the deck. I did not have 150 Jeweled Lotus in a long box, just waiting for the number to go up. That's not how I collect. I own cards that I'm going to play with. Now that we've set our ground rules and you know who I am and where my perspective comes from in this conversation, let's get into the actual bans. We lost Dockside Extortionist, Jeweled Lotus, Mana Crypt, and Nadu Winged Wisdom. I think Dockside Extortionist is an easy ban. I think this is a good ban. This card has been a known troublemaker for several years now, and losing it is not a big deal. I'll talk about the cEDH implications a little bit later on in the video, but in terms of we all knew this card was a problem and that it might go, no surprise at all. The second one, Nadu Winged Wisdom. This ban is also fine. It's a new card. Everyone knew it was busted. It broke Modern, and it is powerful and unfun to play against in EDH as well. Nadu creates a different conversation, though, which is its own set of concerns, not just the fact that this Nadu got banned. The story of Nadu is that there was a version tested and approved during Modern Horizons 3 testing inside of Wizards of the Coast, the play design team who is in charge of that. They contracted a bunch of professional Magic players to come in and supplement the actual internal Wizards of the Coast play design team. They hammered out a bunch of stuff, identified what would be cool, what would not be cool, and then sent the file on, and the contracted pro players were dismissed, and the testing team went home. And then the commander team came back and said they're concerned about Nadu's play patterns. I believe the original Nadu, it gave your permanents flash. It was like 3 mana, 3/4 flying, your permanents have flash. And I imagine the concern on that was that plus Seedborn Muse is basically Prophet of Crucifix, which is a banned card. And I could see how these cards would easily go in the same deck together, and Simic is so powerful, and I could see why the commander team would be concerned about that. But that note resulted in Nadu being kicked back to the hands of the lead designer, now without a playtest team to work on it again, who just changed the card to do something different, and it went out the door in the 11th hour. Resulting in the situation where a card that was fine for Modern, the format it was designed for in Modern Horizons 3, was rejected by the commander team, then changed, and then ended up banned in Modern and banned in Commander. Did not solve the problem while creating a second problem, and whatever systems or hierarchy are in place where the commander team can just hand wave months of work by the play design team and make a design change when no one's really there to test it and tune it on the way out, that feels like a problem to me. And I hope that Wizards is fixing their internal process, so something like that can't happen again. Michael Majors, the lead designer of Modern Horizons 3, wrote a whole article about the process of that, where he basically took responsibility and walked into the sea based on it being completely his fault. But it is not his fault that he's in a system where the Commander design team can kick a fully approved design out the door at the last minute. So, Michael, sorry you were put in that position. Sucks that Nadu ended up the way it did. Hopefully we get to keep playing it in Legacy, where it remains a fine thing to be doing. But we won't miss it in Commander. Now let's get to the big ones, the controversial ones. I'm going to scroll down to where they're talking about Mana Crypt. Mana Crypt coming down for no mana on turn 1. It's quite possible to have the explosive start of Mana Crypt into a Signet, Talisman, land, and another Signet, leaving that player untapping 5 mana on turn 2. Games going to 12 plus turns, the accumulated threat of damage from Mana Crypt provides reasonable counterbalance for its explosive effect, but when you're snowballing to a turn 6 to 8 win, it's a meaningless drawback. Okay, I have some notes. First of all, Sol Ring Talisman is also 5 mana on turn 2, and there's no mention of Sol Ring here at all, which is obviously the comp between Mana Crypt. Sol Ring costs 1, Mana Crypt costs 0. Mana Crypt has an upkeep drawback, Sol Ring doesn't. These cards are about as close as 2 cards could be in the existence of all Magic cards that there could be, without being functionally identical. They are 1 and 1A in terms of ways to accelerate mana that are legal or were legal in the format. And Sol Ring continues to come in every pre-constructed deck, and they literally give you one when you show up at a MagicCon. They want everyone to have a bunch of Sol Rings. They are basically free. They fall out of trees. You can't not own a Sol Ring. It's impossible. I think the US government has a contract with Wizards of the Coast where they make sure every citizen of the world is given a Sol Ring. They're dropped from planes the way that people were warned of incoming attacks in World War II. Just leaflets from the sky. Here are a bunch of Sol Rings. That's how Sol Ring is distributed. And it does the same thing as Mana Crypt. Yet Mana Crypt is now illegal in the format. And the paragraph that they wrote about it describes a play pattern that Sol Ring also facilitates. And they cited the drawback of Mana Crypt in long games, where Sol Ring has no drawback in long games. Or short games. It doesn't matter, because Sol Ring just doesn't come with a drawback. I know the Sol Ring discourse in Commander is completely played out and nobody wants to hear it anymore. And I had not spoken about it for years because I was in the same group. Like, yeah, whatever. They've just decided this is what the format's going to be. It's cool. But now that they've banned Mana Crypt for describing the play patterns of Sol Ring, while continuing to hand everyone a Sol Ring in the world as they're born, as they fall out of their mother's womb, they're given a Sol Ring. It is insane to me. I just don't understand this argument, and I don't understand how we got here. One thing I can understand is if they think these games are okay sometimes, but not all the time, reducing some of this effect makes some sense. Like if it's okay to snowball into 5 mana on turn 2 in 4% of games, but not 8% of games, or whatever the math comes out to, it's not nothing to leave Sol Ring legal while banning a card that is similar to Sol Ring. But it is weird to just nuke this format staple that has been fed to us as a high impact mythic rare every 2 years for the last 6 or 7 years, 8 years, 10 years, however long it's been that they've been pumping Mana Crypts at us. It's weird to just destroy this rather than put that into a rule 0 conversation of, hey, we don't accelerate like that in this room. Like, we don't play with cards like Mana Crypt to Jeweled Lotus. It's like, okay, cool. If I draw my Mana Crypt, I'll discard it and draw another card. Now we can play together. That's so easy. I've done that a million times when I end up at a table where my deck's just a little too powerful for what they're doing. Banning it is just so crazy to me. One thing that is not crazy to me, though, about Mana Crypt is this is a card that was released as a promo, never went through standard in, I believe, 1995, maybe 96. This is a very old, weird card that was never meant to be balanced in any format. It was just sort of given out in books. You got it out of a book when you bought a book in the late 90s. A weird card that was never balanced for anything 25 years ago, 29 years ago even. Yeah, it's closer to 30 than 25. Creeping up and becoming a problem over time to the point where it's no longer sustainable, that does at least fit the pattern of a bannable card. This thing's old, it's weird, it's powerful by design, and, we just can't support it anymore. It's got to go. That does at least make sense to me in terms of the lifespan of a banned card. Now let's talk about Jeweled Lotus. Another card that could give you 5 mana on turn 2. So they're really into this, the idea of 5 mana on turn 2. This is something that is a repeating theme in this ban announcement. Jeweled Lotus does it without even needing a good hand. Though you're restricted in what you could do with the mana, 4 and 5 mana commanders can pack a significant punch nowadays. Yes, 4 and 5 mana is generally a high mana value of a card, and cards that you're spending 4 or 5 mana on should be pretty good. They often draw cards to make up for the one-shot mana, and defensive abilities such as Ward can't be interacted with that early in the game. Okay. When I read this, I was dragged back to February 2024. I am on Magic Twitter. I follow a bunch of Commander people. I follow a bunch of competitive constructed players, follow limited experts. I follow everyone. So I'm generally in tune with the discourse. And this stupid thing was what the casual Commander world was talking about. Voja, Jaws of the Conclave. 5 mana, Vig, Trample, Ward 3, 5/5. When Voja, Jaws of the Conclave attacks, put X+1 counters on it, or X+1 counters on each creature you control, where X is the number of elves you control, then draw a card for each wolf you control. And I remember people being mad about this and wondering why. This card does not gain advantage on entry. This card has to attack to draw 1 card. You need an elf in play for it to buff your squad at all. If you do just ranch this thing out on turn 2 out of a Jeweled Lotus, how many wolves and elves are you going to have in play on turn 3 when it attacks? And if you spent a card on the Jeweled Lotus, then you spent a card to get a wolf somehow, and you draw 2 cards, then you're back to even. And these play patterns play like crazy into any Wrath, because this encourages you to just have a bunch of creatures at play. And Wrath's sweepers are just staples of Commander. I was very confused about why people were mad about this card. But I am not the target audience, because here we are, 8 months later, and commanders that pack a significant punch and draw cards and have Ward that can't be interacted with in the early game were cited directly in the reason for banning Jeweled Lotus. Voja got us in the end. In terms of gameplay, I agree with these bans. If there were nothing else to consider, and every game had to be balanced, these cards clearly should not be legal. I am actually excited to build in the new cEDH metagame. I am excited for open deck slots in just the small number of decks I had that played Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt. It's cool to be able to add a new card to your deck, because you only get 99 of them, and it's fun to try a new card out. And cuts are often hard to find. Now we have to cut these, so I am excited about all of that. I have also spent the last many years rolling my eyes when someone has turn 1 Mana Crypt, like, oh, here we go. Okay, they're gone. Good for gameplay. But that's not what I'm really bugged about with this set of bans. Going back to Mana Crypt and how that is a weird promo card that was not balanced around anything and just put into books as a promo in the late 90s. That is not the case of Jeweled Lotus. That card was printed 4 years ago. It's been reprinted already since then. We've gotten 2 big rollouts of Jeweled Lotus in the last 4 years. The most recent one was 13 months ago. And nobody asked for this. This was not, what fun card could we put in a book in 1996 when nobody knew anything? This was designed in, or at least released in 2020. It was probably designed in 2018, 2019 by people who know exactly how Magic works by this point, nearly 30 years into the game, and decided to put this in packs. A card that did not exist, nobody knew could exist, nobody asked for, nobody specifically said, hey, could I have a Black Lotus that only casts my commander? And when it was previewed, it exploded, as you would expect. People were like, holy smokes, this thing is amazing. We could never have fathomed this, and we couldn't. Why would we know to ask for this? And what happened with Jeweled Lotus is they went in the lab and they said, we can't just keep re-releasing Mana Crypt. What can we do to sell a commander set? Let's invent something new that every Commander player is going to need, and they're going to run to the store and shred packs to get access to. And that's where we got Jeweled Lotus. And this is where it rubs me the wrong way. It starts to bother me. Mana Crypt, EDH Commander didn't exist at the time, wasn't legal and standard, who cares? Jeweled Lotus, we know exactly what this is for, with the full clarity of having designed Magic for nearly 30 years. We know exactly what we're doing. Send it. Only for 4 years later, 1 year later, if you bought it out of the more recent printing, it's gone. Not legal in the only format where it can be played. Mana Crypt is a vintage cube staple. It's a vintage staple. There are still people out in the world who play Magic just with their friends, with the cards they have, and don't really follow any specific type of ban list. They play 7-person free-for-alls with 68 card decks or whatever they've got. You could still Mana Crypt there. But in terms of Jeweled Lotus being so specifically for the Commander rule set and then banned by Commander, there's no reason to put this in a vintage cube. It would probably be in a Commander cube. Something like that is still a use for it. If you have a play group who ignores the ban list, then you could continue to use this. If you rule zero it in, we'll talk about rule zero in a little bit, you could still play it there. But if you rule zero it locally, and then you attend a Magic Con and try to sit down at a table and you play a Jeweled Lotus, the table will be like, what the hell? You can't play that card. And you'll be like, oh no, I play with my friends. Sorry. And then you will discard it and draw a new card to replace it, which is what everyone who was already doing when they had a high power card at a table that didn't match their thing. So why did we ban it? And if Rule Zero doesn't cover the conversation of we don't play with acceleration like that, our games are a little slower, and you could just say, okay, I'll either pull it from my deck or cycle it if I draw it. If Rule Zero doesn't cover that basic interaction, then Rule Zero should not be discussed anymore by anyone with any serious bone in their body. If it can't do that, then it can't do anything. And I think these bans prove that Rule Zero doesn't work. These are the easiest cards to Rule Zero out of a deck, and instead they're just illegal and taking hundreds of dollars in value out of people's decks along the way. And that brings my personal opinion to the conclusion that Dockside Extortionist and Nadu were good bans, and Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt were bad bans. The Commander Rules Committee made an unprecedented move this week, unfortunately as the result of harassment to some of their members, and they revealed who voted for what. And they revealed that member of the Rules Committee, Olivia Gobert-Hicks, wanted to ban Dockside Extortionist and Nadu, and apparently the Rules Committee is working on new tools to find the right table, whatever that means. I hope it works out, because that's a really important problem in EDH that would have solved for Mana Crypt and Jeweled Lotus existing, and the people would have found the correct tables where they can play those cards with these new tools. Unfortunately, everybody else on the panel wanted them all gone now. Shout out to Olivia for being the voice of the people in the room, and remember our conversation from the top of the video. If you are harassing Olivia or anyone else, stop. You're a freak. Leave them alone. It's okay to criticize decisions or disagree. I clearly do. And that doesn't mean you have to be in their DMs or being crazy or certainly not threatening. So stop it. And Olivia was your champion if you need somebody to rally behind. Let's talk about the financial fallout a little bit of this decision. I want to start with Magic cards are not a stock market. They are game pieces, but at the same time, while they are game pieces, it is either naive or intellectually dishonest to pretend that they don't have value and that their value is not an appeal of the game. It is a collectible card game. That's what the collection means. That's that part. It's the first C in cCG, and it's important. Opening a big card in a pack is exciting. I remember being a kid and opening my first foil rare. I remember being a kid and opening a card I actually needed for my deck. I opened a Curse Scroll out of Tempest. That card was $20 at the time, which is one of the most expensive cards that there was, legal and standard. And that was a lot of money to me as a 10-year-old. It was a pride of my collection. I didn't go buy that. It came out of a pack. That can't happen if cards aren't worth something. That feeling can't happen if cards aren't worth something. I traded it to my friend for a bunch of cards I needed for a bunch of decks. That can't happen if some cards aren't worth more than others. This is part of the system. Opening a Jeweled Lotus or a Mana Crypt is awesome for any player. They are the chase mythic. They are billed as such. They can immediately go into basically any deck if you play Commander. And they were kind of just the perfect slam open. This is awesome. I either just got $100 store credit from my local store to buy whatever I want, or I massively upgraded the power level of my deck with just one slot. Either way, that rules. And that's from the perspective of someone who doesn't have a big collection. I will tell you personally, I recently opened some Commander Masters. Maybe I won some collector boosters at a RCQ or something. I don't remember the situation in which I was cracking random packs of Commander Masters. That's not normally something I do, but I did, and I opened a full art Jeweled Lotus. One of the 5 Jeweled Lotuses I owned, I didn't buy. I opened it right out of a pack, and it was the full art one. It was awesome, and even I, in my 25 years of collecting with my big collection and my 2 Black Lotuses and everything, was hyped for that Lotus that I just opened. And I went and I found a casual deck that didn't have a Jeweled Lotus in it already. And I was like, yep, upgrading this one. Boom, right in it went. That feeling is cool. And for those who didn't open one, but wanted that same feeling of massively upgrading their deck with just one card, Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt are the type of card that you would save up your packs for throughout the year. You play some drafts, you maybe win some store credit in a little tournament, you open 2 or 3 packs every time you go to Target and you just put the rares in a binder, and then eventually you get to a critical mass where you could push all that stuff into one big card. Trading up, they call it. You get to trade up into something that levels up your collection from a bunch of random junk to one awesome thing. And Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt are the type of thing that people would strive to do that with. These are the types of cards people would ask for their birthday or as a Christmas present. This is a very exciting thing to have, and there are a bunch of different paths to get to it. When I was a kid, it was dual lands. I'd play tournaments for a month, show up at FNM, go to Saturday standard tournament, get up enough store credit, and eventually the store credit after a month, plus the rares I had built up in my binder from other stuff, becomes a tropical island. Huge upgrade. Very exciting. This pathway to upgrading your collection has existed forever. There's always cards that are more valuable and desirable than others because they are good. And these 2 were poster children of that. Leveling up from unpowered to powered, whatever the power scale is in whatever type of Magic you play, is a big feeling, and it's a big upgrade. And honestly, it's the kind of thing that gets you hooked and want more power. You go mad with power. I won my first Mox. It was a Mox Emerald. I won it in a vintage tournament, and holding that piece of paper made me realize the Power 9 is not an imaginary thing for other people. I could have them. I have one right now. And that sent me on a path of getting the other 8 over the next several years worth of tournaments and trade-ins and using my store credit I got from judging Star City events. And this is just part of the Magic Collector experience. And I guarantee out there in the world, there are a large number of people who their Jeweled Lotus and or their Mana Crypt were the crown jewel of their collections. Might even have been half of their total collection value. Maybe they just traded their whole binder worth of $1 to $5 rares up into that, and now all of that is gone. Those people are devastated. That is one of the 2 people who is holding the bag here. It's people who worked really hard to get to these very important, high value, I'm going to put it in every deck for the rest of time kind of cards. And now they are left empty and they don't have that anymore. And me, with my roughly $3,000 exposure across the 11 cards that I own that we're talking about here, I can absorb that. That doesn't change my life. A 15-year-old who just got that Mana Crypt for Christmas or just traded every other card they owned to have it might have just quit the game. That's the micro level. And then the macro level, the opposite of the individual person just owning cards so they could play with them, is stores. stores and traders who are essential to the Magic ecosystem. If you want to get a card for your deck locally, stores have to trust the market enough to keep those cards in stock. If a store has their inventory just slashed like this, it could be the loss that costs you a place to play. Any investment carries risk. A lot of people have been saying that this week, like that it's smart or that it's useful in any way. Of course, investments carry risk. There is no guaranteed way to turn $1 into $2, or else everyone would just do it and then money would be meaningless. Everything carries risk, and you have to decide where you're going to put that risk. If you are in the money-making business, which in a capitalist system, we are all in the money-making business because we have to be to survive, and especially stores, if you want a place to play, if that is useful to you, if you like the convenience of walking in and saying, hey, I need a Mana Crypt, they're like, cool, we got a couple options. Which kind do you like? If that's an interaction you like having, this shit can't happen. In terms of placing bets and where you put your risk, putting risk on a card that they reprint every couple years and maintains its value because everyone wants it and it's super desirable, and even if they reprint it, it still stays above $100. Like, that is the type of rock solid inventory and non-rotating casual appeal. That's the type of inventory that stores can hang their hat on. Like, yes, it costs me a lot of money to spend $90 in store credit for this person to get their Mana Crypt, but I could put it in the case for $130 and I will make a profit eventually because this thing is stable. Someone's eventually going to want that. And that was true. That was a safe bet unless something like this happens. And this just happened. I'll tell you a story of 3 of the local stores that I attend or did attend in one of their cases. One of my local stores runs at the bare minimum of single stock. Whatever walks in the door or is opened at a draft, they will trade it in and they'll put it in their case. But they're not ripping boxes to make sure that they have cards in stock for you to come in and buy. They are not online looking for deals to see what they could get cheap and then flip it in the store. They're not on that grind like that. They provide a place to play, some bathrooms you can use. They got a really good snack bar, but in general, you can't count on them to have a card you need if you drive over to ask for it, because that's just not part of their business model, because they can't afford to be exposed like this. One of my other stores is extremely well stocked in standard legal stuff. They will have standard and a lot of Pioneer, but once you get outside of that, or if you want any special treatment, if you want a Aclazot's Deepest Betrayal, they have them, but they're going to be the regular border one, non-foil, and they will have just enough in stock that they think they can move, and if they run out, they will make some effort to restock them and keep that available to their players. This store has found that standard turns over enough that they can make this profitable without making too much risk. This store does not buy foils. They don't buy promo pack cards. They don't buy extended art things. They just don't buy them. Even if they are valuable, even if you could go on TCG Player and see that that card is $10, they will offer you nothing for it because they can't reliably move it. They just want regular versions of the regular cards that people are going to need so they can get it in, get it out, lock in their profits, and not shut their doors. And the last store in my story, it was the biggest store in my region for a very long time. And the owner was extremely dedicated to having 20 copies of every card in stock. He took inventory twice a year. It was a whole ordeal, pulling boxes out of the closet, boxes out of storage, stacks of cards. Any card you wanted, he would have. And you could hang your hat on that. You walk in and say, I need an Invasion Daragaz. He would have 20 of them for you to pick from, which is an incredible service for the community. Though, that store closed in 2021. It's gone. It was open for a long time. The belt started tightening, probably 2016, 2017. And then by 2021, he packed up shop because just couldn't do it anymore. It was not sustainable to be riding that much risk on every single thing. Cards get banned, cards get printed, cards get reprinted, cards whatever. And every single time the market moved a little bit, the value of his inventory swung by tens of thousands of dollars, maybe more. I don't even know how much he had in there. It was probably millions. But that store is gone. And to someone operating on thin margins trying to keep a play space open for the community, if that person commits to having 20 mana vaults and 20 jeweled lotuses in stock for the players to buy if they need one, something like this wipes thousands, maybe tens of thousands of dollars off their ledger. It's gone. And that is really bad. I am not a vendor. I am not a store owner. I am friends with many store owners. And I'm not an MTG finance person in terms of speculating and trying to get ahead of the market and stuff. But I do have to stay aware of MTG finance trends as someone with a large collection because it does affect me. And experts that in the field, I've seen them say numbers between $100 and $120 million of value deleted from the Magic ecosystem with this announcement. That's spread over many people, thousands, tens of thousands of individual players. And then, of course, the stores, the traders, the vendors, they have to have these cards to sell to the people like us who want these cards. And $120 million is a lot of money to be deleted by a decision that seems like it doesn't need to be made. And that there was someone in the room, shout out Olivia, saying, hey, let's not make this decision. Obviously, that number is hard to verify, but modern print runs are known. You could do the math, how many copies of Jeweled Lotus actually exist, divided by how much it was worth, minus what it's worth now. Like, this can be done by someone who cares to do it. And I've seen from multiple different sources who would be the type of people who care to do this math, 100 to 120 million. Shocking number. And if you don't think this is important, if you have a aggressive stance against MTG finance, if you think nobody should be staking their life or their business or their financial decisions on a card game, then you just don't understand how game stores work. You don't want somewhere to play. When you go to build a deck, you don't want anywhere to get a card to do that. That is a extremely unfleshed out understanding of what's what. If you want to be mad at an individual person, like somebody buying every moat in existence because they realized that moat was undercosted, it's on the reserve list, and then moat goes from $50 to $300 overnight, that is understandable to be upset about. But to say no person ever should care or want to make any money off of Magic the Gathering is a middle finger to the stores that you show up to play at. And I don't know, maybe rethink that position at least a little bit.
This video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, the easiest way to build Magic decks online. Moxfield supports over 30 formats, including Legacy and everything else you'll see on this channel. There's multiple customizations so you can interact with your deck how you want. Views such as text, grid, or stacks, and groupings like type, subtype, color, color identity, even artist. The site offers light mode, dark mode, and so much more. However you want to see your deck, Moxfield can provide it for you. Follow my Moxfield to keep up with the channel and what I'm playing in paper. I'll see you there.
In terms of actual money lost, let's look at this. Mana Crypt, it was 150, spiked around 200, a solid 175. This is just like for kind of the most basic version of it for the last year, like high hundreds for the last year. And it is now listed at 90, which is still an expensive Magic card. It's still more expensive than a lot of Magic cards. We are just days after the announcement here. The market is still settling. Who knows where this is going to go? Like I said, Mana Crypt, still legal in Vintage, still legal in Vintage Cube, still legal in casual, no rules Magic the Gathering. Jeweled Lotus has gone from, looks like it peaked around 135. Again, this is just the most basic version. Peaked around 135, but it's been a solid $100 bill for most of a year. And here at the start of last year, this is right when the reprint came out. So that was a dip. And now we are looking at 50. You could get one for $50. And I don't know if these are actually selling. If they are selling, I'm not sure who they're selling to. This one, you need a Commander Cube, or you just need to ignore the ban list to have anywhere to put this. That's a tough crater. But as always, this energy's got to go somewhere. Here's Mana Vault from 5th edition, just like the gnarliest, worst version of Mana Vault. A damaged copy you can now buy for $100. For the last year, this card was 30, high 20s, crept up to, oh wow, 35, 38. Now, the cheapest damaged worst copy you could get is $100, currently listed on TCG Player. And then you want a nice one, 120. Oh, here's a damaged one for 125. And it only goes up from there. And again, this is just the most basic version of this. It's not like banning an expensive mana accelerator out of the format is going to make the format cheaper. That is going to go somewhere else. The rush is just going to go here. What's the next best thing? Here's Mana Vault just spiking through the earth. And then there's this other fun factor where, I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up, but I'm going to pan down a little bit. On the bottom shelf of my bookcase, there's a box of Eternal Masters, which I've had sealed for a while. I like sealed product. And that has Mana Crypt in it. Or the set does. I don't know if that box does. Now I'll never know, because the big hit is gone out of that. But also is Double Masters, which has Mana Vault in it. This box with Mana Crypt, now worth less. This box with Mana Vault, now worth more. Who knows? It's all a roller coaster, and people are going to buy the cards that they need to play with. And if we can't have Mana Crypt and Jeweled Lotus to play with, Mana Vault, it's your time to shine, little buddy. And a big point of frustration for this is that these were blindsides. Mana Crypt and Jeweled Lotus banned. It was unfathomable a week ago. I would have thought that these would just be illegal and be format staples forever. And we would get Mana Crypt every 2 years and Jeweled Lotus every 2 years, just back and forth to sell Commander releases. And it would be a nice little cadence. They would stay desirable and everyone would want them. And we would get reprints on the regular. And that's just not the case. It's just gone. Wake up on a Monday morning, these cards don't exist anymore. And the blindside nature of that, Nadu and Dockside, like Dockside, we know that card's busted. We've known for a while. It's been discussed openly that that card is on watch. Nadu, basically from launch, the rules committee were saying publicly, like, yeah, we got our eye on this one. But outside of a random tweet from the rules committee in 2020, when Jeweled Lotus was first originally previewed, there was one random tweet that was like, we got our eye on this one, but it hasn't been discussed since. Nobody knew that was coming. Mana Vault has never been discussed, other than the abstract idea that fast mana can be problematic at low power tables. We know. Yet we continue putting Soul Ring in the hand of every baby. But yeah, this was just out of nowhere. And nobody knew outside of the rules committee and Wizards of the Coast, who they definitely had to talk to about this. The Commander Advisory Group, who are the group of kind of eyes on the ground who are playing in LGSs and making content and talking to the community, and they run information back to the rules committee. And the rules committee are the people who actually make the big decisions. The Commander Advisory Group had no idea. This was not discussed with them. They tried to keep this tight because they knew it would be a nuclear bomb on the marketplace. Prominent members of that group, such as Jimmy and Josh from Game Nights, they were blindsided with the rest of us on Monday. Josh Lee Kwai has been actually quite vocal that he thinks this was a bad decision. So obviously he didn't have a weigh in on that. So if you're over on Game Nights being crazy in their comments, they didn't know. They had no power over this. And in fact, they don't like it. Brian Kibler, who is one of the biggest Magic and gaming celebrities that we have, who is also romantically involved with a member of the rules committee, had no idea either. He was posting his gripes. He didn't like the change either. He posted a picture of all the Mana Crypts and Jeweled Lotuses he owns on Monday, along with the rest of us. They kept this thing locked down. And honestly, I don't know how they could have done it any other way. They did release this kind of September 2024 Commander banning FAQ. This was released by the Rules Committee a day or two after the ban, when a bunch of people had a bunch of questions and backlash about it. And 3, why didn't you give advance notice of this change? We'll own this one. This could have been done much better. And then there's a bunch of talk about cards like Hull Breacher, Flash, and Paradox Engine that people actively were asking to get banned. I think that Dockside and Nadu clearly fall into that of there was public discussion about this. We knew these cards were causing problems, and it's understandable why they were on a watch list and why they were gone. I don't think anyone was asking directly for Jewel Lotus to be banned. But what could they do, even? You can't whisper it to the Commander Advisory Group, because those are just regular people. And some of them would probably be affected directly by having 2 or 3 copies each of Mana Vault or Jeweled Lotus among their big Commander collection. They're obviously invested in Commander. They're on the Commander Advisory Group. They care a lot. I imagine they'd like to sneakily dump some of their stock before it becomes worthless. And you can't have that. Like, you just can't. Because if that starts, then the dominoes fall. They say it to one person in confidence, and then a store realizes they suddenly bought 15 Mana Crypts this week. Now what's going on? Leaks are a huge problem and would have wreaked havoc on this as much as, maybe more than, dropping the ban list on us with no warning at all. They certainly couldn't whisper it to stores and just be like, hey, if you could divest so you don't get blown out too bad by this, like, then what does that mean? That means they're either lowballing or not buying on these Commander staples from players for the gap that they know about it, whilst trying to get out of them and selling them to people who will end up holding the bag. Like, anyone you protect from this announcement screws over someone else, and just ripping off the Band-Aid and screwing over everyone is the best way to handle it, other than just not doing it, which would be my position on the issue. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the timing of these releases. The Commander Rules Committee and Wizards of the Coast are separate entities. However, they do talk. They work closely together. Wizards of the Coast could not have carte blanche control of their premium product, which is Commander, in the hands of people who can act completely independently, which does affect the bottom line of a billion-dollar corporation. No way that that's just, you do your thing, we'll do ours, and hopefully we line up at the end of the day. No chance. Sheldon Menery used to talk about getting flown out to Wizards of the Coast to consult on sets from the Commander perspective. He was shown cards early. He was famously, when, was it March of the Machines or One? All will be One. Whichever set Elish Norn, Mother of Machines, was in, Sheldon famously got on Twitter and was like, I asked them not to print this card. I think it's going to mess up Commander, which didn't prove out to be true. But the fact that he was shown a card at the point in the process where it could still be changed or altered, and that is something that they trusted members of the Rules Committee with, clearly they are working together. This was not a surprise to Wizards of the Coast when the Rules Committee banned these cards on Monday. No chance that that is the case. While answering questions in the Rules Committee Discord this week, one of the Rules Committee members said that they've been discussing this change with Wizards of the Coast for over a year. And sets designed are 1 to 2 years in the future from when we see them. That is about the timeline from, we got to design the cards. We got to decide what's going to be in the set. We got to trim the file. We got to commission art. We got to put together promo materials. We got to get printing. We got to get distributing. That stuff takes 1 or 2 years, which is about the timeline of when these talks started and now. Also in this FAQ, one of the questions is, did Wizards of the Coast know these cards might be banned when they sold them in 2023? We have discussed our concerns about fast mana, including marquee cards like Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt, with WotC for some time, but had not decided to ban them until recently. We knew it would be a painful change and maybe waited too long, but once we decide to ban cards, we act, and we never sat on a banning. That's what they said. And let's just look for a minute at this timeline. August 2023, that's 13 months ago. Commander Masters is the new set. This is the official Wizards of the Coast splash page. Like, look at this cool new set that's coming out. And what card do they feature? Jeweled Lotus. If they were talking to Wizards close to a year ago, and they said, hey, we want to ban Jeweled Lotus, do you think the company paying to have this website built would say, yeah, go ahead, ban Jeweled Lotus, that's cool? No chance. No chance. Imagine the marquee chase card from your big special release set, the one that's featured on your website, being banned during that set's rollout or when it's still actively on shelves. No, it wouldn't happen. And then a few months later, November 2023, that's 11 months ago now, well within the year that they were allegedly talking about this, Lost Caverns of Ixalan, the official Wizards of the Coast splash page to sell this set. What card is featured on the website? It's Mana Crypt. This isn't even a card in the standard legal set. This is not Aclazotz. This is not some big cool dinosaur. This is Mana Crypt. This is on like the special guest sheet. This is not even in the set. And they know it's going to sell packs, so this is what they put on the website. I didn't manipulate this. This is literally just, you scroll down, you see a Mana Crypt. This website is still live right now because you could still buy these packs. This is a standard legal set right now. You could buy these packs. But 11 months after the initial release, imagine the embarrassment once again. Hey, we want to ban Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt. Yeah, sure, go for it. We have our team working on this website that's in front of us right now. It'll be fine. No way. I don't buy that there wasn't some intentionality to when this happened. No matter what is said in this FAQ Google Doc, it's just, this is embarrassing. This is a train wreck. If this is what the marketing material is for Wizards of the Coast and the RC bans these two cards while this is being rolled out, which is allegedly when these conversations started. No thanks. I'm not having that. Likewise, do you think there's any chance that a website like this is being built for a 2025 product that's going to feature one of these cards on it? Right now is when the files would be locked for sets that are going to come out next year. And this sort of material, like the booster pack that features Jeweled Lotus prominently, or the marketing material that features Mana Crypt prominently, this is when this sort of stuff would have to be built. And a year ago is when they would have had to decide not to put those cards in sets anymore, which is allegedly when these conversations started. This point number 6, we never sat on a ban. Maybe it wasn't quite so explicit as Wizards telling them you can announce this in November or September, not before, not after, like September is your window. Maybe it wasn't quite that explicit, but like, no way. Jeweled Lotus on the website, Mana Crypt on the website. This is when they would have been talking about this. And next year, if a big commander set comes out, what do you think the chances are Mana Vault is the big chase? This now from $35 up to $100 overnight Mana Vault. What do you think the chances are that's going to be the chase mythic instead of those other two? That's going to be here on the website. The Mana Vault featured in Commander Masters 2. And I'm going to go all the way in and put on my tinfoil hat for a minute here. MagicCon Vegas Festival in a Box. This is an exciting new product, Mystery Booster 2. Super cool draft format. And new cards, new printings, new foils, just the hottest thing on the market right now. And you could have one of these boxes sent to your house for $250. And it came with some other stuff. Historically, the MagicCon in a box offerings have come with multiple opportunities to draft. Because drafting with your friends is an experience you might have at a MagicCon. An experience you have in a MagicCon is not randomly busting collector packs. Previous MagicCon Festival in a Boxes have come with 2 or 3 boxes of standard legal product. Some came with a mystery booster and a box of something else. One of them came with a mystery booster box and like 24 random packs throughout the last year. So you could have kind of a wacky draft with your friends in addition to your mystery box. This one came with a collector booster of Lost Caverns of Ixalan, a collector booster of Wilds of Eldraine, and a collector booster of Commander Masters. Why would a product, I think this is the 6th or 7th one that they've done, and it's been draft focused every time with draftable packs. Why would this one suddenly be sending Lost Caverns of Ixalan collector boosters and Commander Masters collector boosters to people? Commander Masters and Lost Caverns of Ixalan collector boosters sent directly to people days before this announcement. I got my Festival in a Box on Friday. This announcement came up Monday. I opened my collector booster packs that came in my Festival in a Box on Friday thinking, wouldn't it be sweet to get a Mana Crypt or a Jeweled Lotus? This timing is just preposterous. These packs, they're not worthless, but the 2 number 1 chase things that would come out of a collector booster, and the whole point of a collector booster is to open the money card. These are not draftable packs in the traditional sense. Why are these, specifically these 2 things, being dumped like this on this timeline. The other tinfoil hat part of this conversation is that power creep sells. How do you get eternal constructed players like myself, the Legacy, the Vintage, and EDH? Commander. Commander is an internal constructed format. You could play all cards unless they're banned. How do you get them to move cards throughout Magic's history out of their deck and make room for new cards? How do you convince them to do that? And one of the answers is print cards that are better than the ones they have. That's how we got Jeweled Lotus. That's how we got Hull Breacher, also banned, by the way. Modern Horizon sets gave us cards like Nadu, banned, by the way. They shake us up with power crept things like the Modern Horizon sets, like Commander Masters things printed directly into Eternal formats, where they don't have to pass the balance bar to be playable in Standard or Pioneer or the lower power formats. They just shove them right in and break all normal rules and give us something that we need for our deck. And what is better than Mana Crypt or Jeweled Lotus? How do we creep that? How do we replace that or make something better without doubling up on this effect and making decks even more busted? You can't. One that does 4? A Mana Crypt that taps for 3 but costs 1? Like a Soul Ring Crypt? I don't know. It's preposterous to imagine because these cards are so busted. If you can't power creep over these, but you need to get them out of decks so you could sell new cards, banning them is certainly a solution to that problem. Now you can print something a little worse than Jeweled Lotus or a little worse than Mana Crypt, but a little better than Mana Vault. And now everyone's going to need that. And now room is open in the decks. Like we said, there's no chance that the next Commander product is going to be headlined by Jeweled Lotus or by Mana Crypt. They just can't use those to sell packs anymore. And I think the next set we see rolled out is going to feature Mana Vault prominently, or some new card that is slightly better than this, but slightly worse than this. And that's going to be the new thing that we all need. And remember, when we see it next year, they would have had to think about it a year ago from now. So they already knew. All of these pieces were moving. And that concludes the tinfoil hat part of the presentation. I'm going to take that off, and let's just talk about some cEDH and then wrap this up. Okay, cEDH is next. I don't have a lot to say about this. This is actually the spot where I'm least worried about anything. And even from the original announcement, I was not worried about cEDH figuring it out at all. One thing I've seen is like, oh, these are casual problems affecting competitive play. Like the jerk at your LGS couldn't be trusted with a Jeweled Lotus, and now cEDH is going to suffer for it. Sure, yeah. The rules committee made clear that they don't arbitrate for the needs of cEDH. They are aware of the format, but it is low priority, or they're aware of the metagame. cEDH is a metagame, not a format. For now, but we're going to talk about it being a different format in a minute here. But yeah, the basic person that the rules committee sets rules for is not playing in tournaments. And it doesn't make sense if they believe that Mana Crypt and Jeweled Lotus are ruining the casual experience for the majority of people. It doesn't make sense for them to keep that card for the small group who like to play competitively. So I don't disagree with that. And yeah, it's true. You did it. There were some entire decks built around finding and looping Dockside Extortionist. There are entire commanders that now have to rework how they work, if they work at all anymore. Really, Red, Rakdos, and Mardu were very Dockside-centric things, like Goblin Matron and Goblin Recruiter saw play in some of those decks just to find Dockside Extortionist. It was that important. And those decks are going to have to change. Decks with expensive commanders like Crom, my beloved Crom, Ludovic's Opus. 5 mana's a lot. That guy's going to be a lot harder to cast without 2 ways to accelerate into him. Those decks are going to have to figure something out. There are some obvious winners like Rograk Silas that, I mean, it definitely played Dockside and Mana Crypt, but neither one was essential to its plan. That deck is still largely intact. A deck like Kinnan that didn't play Jeweled Lotus anyway, and it loses Mana Crypt, but now it just plays like another elf or something. Kinnan will be fine. There are some that emerge unscathed. There are some that are just dead, and there's going to be winners and losers that shake out from that. And I think all of that is fine, maybe even good. Competitive metagames play what they get. If you've heard me talk about legacy bans, modern bans, all that throughout history, I'm on this channel every single day talking about Eternal formats. I have the Eternal Glory podcast that I co-host. We talk about bans over there. And I am going to play with the cards that I'm given because I am at heart a competitive player. And if I want to show up at the local game store or the regional tournament, whatever it is, the cEDH 10K, I will play with the cards that are legal and I will figure it out because we have to. We don't get to rule 0 and say that Mana Crypt is still legal because we're agreeing upon a rule set by which we're all going to compete for prizes, which, with stakes on the line, encourages people to build with what they got and do the best they can with the new rule set. And that is fun. I'm not worried about cEDH at all. And just today, while I was putting together this whole presentation, this is obviously unscripted because I've just been rambling like a maniac, but I did put together some talking points. This thing came out. The Competitive Commander Collective, which is a group of people who have announced their intent to find a different group of people to manage cEDH. That is a big reduction of what's been said here. They have this whole plan laid out and stuff. This is cEDHcollective.com. And I don't know where this is going to go. But if there is a world where a group of people is trusted to make rules for cEDH, and maybe those rules involve a different ban list, it is very live right now through a project like this one that it becomes normal to play with Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt again in at least one metagame in the EDH world. So keep your eyes on this. And my final takeaways here, I'll start the sign-off process. Long term, what is this going to do to Magic? What is this going to do to EDH? The answer is nothing. Nothing at all. There is a large group of people, the extreme casual player who would never spend more than a couple dollars on a card for their deck. Maybe they spend $0 and they only play what they open or could trade for. That person didn't have Mana Crypt or Jeweled Lotus anyway, and they don't care. There are the weirdly malicious weirdos that I called out at the beginning of the video who actively seem to want to punish everyone who's ever had a Mana Crypt or Jeweled Lotus and make fun of them for doing that. And those people are living large right now. They don't care. The people who play EDH with their friends, or they go to the LGS and that's their social circle, they're just going to play with whatever they get. And next year or the year after that, when the next commander set comes out and Mana Vault is the chase mythic, or Mana Bank, or whatever the hell they make for us that's slightly better than Mana Vault but slightly worse than Mana Crypt that we have to buy now, the hogs will line up for their slop and chow it all down. They will be happy to get it. A year from now, nobody will talk about this. Nobody will care. Commander will continue thriving as a format. My personal feelings are that I was tricked, that I was the mark in a successful grift, that I saw a 3-card Monty game being played on the street, and I walked up and thought, hey, I have a pretty good memory. I think I could win this one. And obviously, the dealer palmed the queen as soon as the game started, and I never had a chance to win. I feel a little stupid, thinking that I could trust the people who steward this game that I love, and I still love. None of that changes. I feel stupid that I trusted these people in this way, and something as flashy and shiny as Jeweled Lotus that turned out to just be dust in the wind. Just, we were sold snake oil, and they knew it a year ago, and they continued selling us the exact same snake oil, and we continued buying it. I feel a little mad, a little hurt, and not because of the financial loss, but because of the deception. I am, as I said at the top of the video, a longtime collector. I am someone who does not play with proxies myself, though if that is how you need to access the game, I don't hate you for it. That I don't hate anyone for anything like it. The stakes are too low on anything Magic related to hate anyone. Hopefully that's been clear throughout my whole thing here. But I personally like owning cards. I think that's part of the thing. I am a spokesperson for that. I like foiling out my decks, and I like to think I am the person that Wizards of the Coast wants in the game, and I feel deceived for being that person right now. I have maintained for years that we don't need the reserve list anymore, that Wizards didn't know how to balance the external factors like a secondary market way back in 1995, and they would do better now. They would handle it right. They wouldn't tank the market. They would get Power 9 and dual lands into the hands of people who want it. without ruining the investments and the promise made of the reserve list to the people who already had these things. I'm not sure I believe that anymore. I still hate the reserve list, but if this week is any indication that the Magic community could not handle the reserve list being repealed, I kind of see that now, which is a tough pill to swallow because the reserve list sucks and I want people playing Legacy and Vintage because those formats are great. I'm not sure how to balance all that. I'm still processing it, but it is how I currently feel. I'm not quitting Magic. I'm not selling off all my cards. I still love the game. I have made many of my best friendships through it. It is my sole source of income for the last 3 years now. I am locked into the Magic the Gathering train as far as it goes. You can't get rid of me that easy. But I will be moving some of my extras. Like having 6 Mana Crypts and 5 Jeweled Lotuses is the reason this was a $3,000 hit instead of a $300 hit. And just playing as long as I have and playing the formats that I do, my collection has something like a dozen Wastelands and 14 Force of Wills. I have over 100 Fetch Lands. I have 80 or 90 Shock Lands. I have 8 copies of the One Ring. Stuff like that. I am going to do an aggressive pass and get that back down to what I really need to play. And just sort of, I have 4 Force of Wills for Legacy. Now I have 4 for Vintage. I have a Commander deck that wants one. And these things that just sort of build up over time if you're a collector and they kind of get away from you and you don't realize until you actually look at your collection tracker, like, oh, I have 14 Force of Wills. I should sell most of those. That's where I'm at with that. I'm still a Magic player. I'm still a Magic collector. I will be reducing my exposure on some of the more gluttonous parts of my collection. And I will keep very clearly in the front of my mind that Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro are a corporation. Their job is to make money. I'm not their friend. They're not my friend. If it makes business sense to them to pump and dump a fake card like Jeweled Lotus into the world that didn't need to exist and then take it away after we've invested hundreds of dollars into it, then that's what they're going to do. And that's just business. And harsh lesson learned. I'm going to sign off with that. Hopefully this was a fun conversation. And as always, keep the comments civil. If you don't like what I said, that's okay. Because I don't like a lot of what the Rules Committee said over the last couple of days. And that's the impetus of this video. It's okay to disagree. It's not okay to be threatening or uncivil. Leave the Rules Committee alone at their personal homes and places of business. And I hope you extend me the same courtesy. Keep it civil. Happy to talk about stuff. I love Magic. Don't love this decision. I'm out of here. See you next time.